Hey, everybody. I had a really, really cool experience today. And I wanted to share it because, well, one, it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the fact that I'm living a nomad life in a foreign country. And two, if I hadn't found myself with a technological failure that uh, might have possibly been avoided in the first place for different reasons. And that I think the fact that it's in a foreign country is what added this extra element, this extra layer of texture and fascination, and the fact that the other parties involved seemed equally appreciative of the journey. And so, if you're here, say hello. I'd love to know and say hello to you back. And so this is my story. So yesterday I finally decided to do some videos, right? I'm launching a Patreon platform and I decided the one activity thing I have to say message that got me to actually do something with it beyond just stuff content up there and not tell anybody that it's there is my music. And so when I knew that the video camera on this laptop was not the best. I put my fancy Logitech camera on there, and the computer could not keep up with the video at just sort of a normal high def, right? And so I dropped the resolution, and it just looked like crap. But I plowed forth anyway, so yay. So I am a longtime Windows user from back when it was Windows 3.1. And did have a MacBook Air for a time when I was doing mostly tech stuff and I had with my clients, and I had a lot of clients with Macs. And I mostly liked it, but it was 13-inch. And as I was preparing to go change my life to a nomad life, I knew I needed to get me a laptop that I was going to be happier with as my full-time computer. My Windows computer was a 34-inch curved monitor and 64 gigs of RAM, and it wasn't quite a gaming computer, but I loved all the real estate, right? And unfortunately, at the time, Apple didn't make a MacBook Air anything bigger than the 13-inch. And I'm just like, I can't run my business off of this. This is not going to be my joy zone. And I didn't want to carry around the extra weight of the Pro. And I'll be honest with you, I still had a bit of a story around whether I was willing to go 100% Apple. Now, mind you, I have two iPhones and an iPad, right? So it's not like I'm Mac averse or Apple averse in any way, right? But it's part of that, all these false stories that I started to shed. This was not one of them. And so when I sold my motorcycle, I immediately went and bought myself my Microsoft Surface laptop, not the tablet version, but an actual laptop. Checked the weight, I checked the specs, and I'm like, okay, this will be great. And and I kept telling myself, I really need to sit with this laptop and make sure it's going to do the job. I really need to sit with this laptop and make sure it's going to do the job, right? This is running mantra in the back of my mind. But I was being cracked wide open during the 2 months before I left Boulder, but I didn't. So the short of it is I didn't spend any time with it. And in fact, even when I got to my cousin's house in San Antonio, I still didn't use it because all my, whatever I didn't sell came with me to San Antonio. I stuffed it all in storage, but I'm like, oh, I got 3 months. I can still use my regular computer. So honestly, I didn't start using that Windows laptop till I got to Colombia. And there's been little problems. It started losing network connection every time it went into sleep mode. The video quality, the camera is super crappy. And I'm just like, oh, this will do for a while until I started doing videos. And that was yesterday. And I went, crap. I'm about to step forward into more content creation. I'm about to get really serious about online program, recording videos, and my one computer is not going to get the job done. I'm like, all right, no big deal. I got a couple people in the States. I can order a MacBook, the new MacBook Air, because now they have the 15-inch. Yay! And I can have my cousin or my dear friend Mike in Albuquerque ship it to me. Easy peasy, right? And I'm like, okay, I better just double check. Chances are I'll be in Ecuador by the time it's ready to ship. Let's go see. Well, it turns out in most cases, nobody wants to receive a laptop by plane because of the lithium battery issue. In fact, it's not a prohibited list, it's a restricted list because it's basically a hazmat item. And in my shipping experience, I'm like, okay, great. Can I buy a Mac in the United States, in Colombia? And in fact, there's a big ass mall on the other side of the main highway here, a few blocks up the way. And they had a Mac Center store that's like a partner store. And I had gone in one day and I'm like, I'm just curious about this Mac because I've been not happy with the Windows computer even before I realized it wasn't going to get the job done. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. But it had a Spanish keyboard. So it's got a couple extra characters and the question mark and the exclamation part are in a different place. So as to accommodate the enye. And I'm like, oh. And so, and as I considered my options, I'm like, well, I'm using this Logitech keyboard all the time anyway, because I tend to have I've got this up on this little stand. And I like it because when I schedule posts like I did today to my profile, now that I have professional mode on, I'm really rambly today, you guys. I can put my phone here and I use the little keyboard and I can even like drag stuff over with my mouse. So I'm like, all right, I'll deal with Spanish Mac. I can set the language in the iOS, no big deal. So now I'm looking online and I had to do some research. Is the base model enough? And it's like, no, I need one with at least 16 gigabytes of RAM or memory. And the bigger the hard drive, the better. So at least twice the hard drive space, right? Yeah, they're not around. And there's a lot of previous versions, but all the previous versions are too small. I wouldn't mind older, but I want the real estate. And I find one. And it's applebogota.com. And I'm looking and it looks all okay. New in the box, blah, blah, blah. So I call the number and I get this allo. And I said, yeah, I'm calling about a MacBook. Oh, yeah. And I said, okay, what are your hours? I'd like to come in and pick it up. He said, okay, here's the address, here's my hours, and we'll have to arrange a time because I don't have a storefront. Basically, it's out of his house. I'm like, okay. New in the box, yes. And I looked again at the computer, and it's got 16 gigabytes of memory. It's got a terabyte of hard drive space, which evidently in the Macs really makes a difference. It does on Windows too, but it had the US keyboard. It's a US version of the MacBook Air, right? And so I kind of sat on it last night and going, this is either totally legit or it's totally sketchy, right? I'm in a foreign country. I did some more looking around and I'm like, this is the only one around here that comes anywhere close to meeting my needs and preferences. And not only that, it's exactly what I wanted. And so I got up this morning, and this is where the synchronicity part comes in. And I just thought about it. And I'm like, the fact that it's exactly what I need, and it's the only one around. And not only that, it's unique because it's a US version, not a Spanish version, right? And I thought, this is a sign. Everything's going to be fine. And I set for myself some key markers. The first thing I decided was when I take a cab, I would ask the cab driver to wait for me and explain to them the situation. I've been chatting up the cab drivers and they all love me. So, I felt pretty good that I might be able to find somebody that would like understand, explain to them the situation. So that was my first kind of point of creating safety. And then I'd also ask them what that part of town is like, right? And I kind of forgot. And so as we're driving there, I'm looking and I'm like, oh, looks like a good district, is what they call them here. And he says, oh, yes, yes, it's very, I'm looking around and it's upscale, even by US standards. Once we pulled up, I'm like, oh, this is fancy. And big glass doors, and there's a giant foyer, and there's a big reception desk. You can't get in until the reception person like hits the buzzer to let you in, all of that, right? And I'm like, okay, it's not as likely that this fell off the back of a truck or they stole it off somebody in a cafe or a co-working space, right? So I'm like, okay, I told the cab driver, I think we're good. So we go in, and finally the gentleman comes down, and he's nicely dressed, kind of looks like a businessman, and sort of business, an upscale version of business casual, right? And I'm like, okay, and he's got a box, and at first I'm like, oh, it's a USPS box. This is, you know, that I don't know. And he says, look, there's a conference area up this way. We can go sit in the conference area and you can take a look at everything. And I said, okay, great. So we go into the conference area and he pulls it out of the USPS, mailing box, and it is genuinely unopened. So I'm like, okay, good. And so I needed to get on to his internet and pay for it through his online store, and his e-commerce platform doesn't accept international transactions. I'm like, oh. So then we thought we'd do Zelle. Zelle wouldn't let me do a large enough transaction. There's a limit you could not get a MacBook for at that limit. So then we're looking at wire transfer, and so my bank would do a wire transfer. He had a bank in the U.S., and so we could do that. But then there was some debate around, how long it would take for it to show up in the bank. And he said, well, he goes, I don't know that I'm comfortable with you leaving until I can see that the money's in the bank. And we clarified, I go, look, it's a US bank. And so my bank said, oh, yeah, by the end of the day. And I said, look, I understand. He's a very nice man. I said, I understand your concern. I go, I'm a small business owner. There's some vulnerability here, and it's a MacBook Air, right? This is you know, this is not a widget. And I said, I'm willing to stick around, as long as I have some Wi-Fi and I need to order some food delivered. There's delivery all over the place here. I'm good. And he goes, you would do that? I said, yeah. Yeah, I said, I understand why you're not comfortable just letting me walk off with it if you don't have the money in the bank. In the same way, I'm not comfortable walking off when I think I've sent you the money and I don't have a laptop. So yeah. And you could see him relax visibly. And he said, you know what? Thank you. And I said, we started like, well, what could we do to help you feel more comfortable? And so basically we got to the point where it sounded like within an hour or two, he'd have some confirmation that my bank had released the funds to his bank and his bank just needs to process it, right? So by then I'm like really comfortable with this human being. And he says, well, if you'd like to come upstairs, you can set up at the table, you can start playing with the laptop, getting it set up for you, and we can order some food if you're hungry. And I said, okay, yeah. And so we get upstairs and, he's like, hey, I want to buy you lunch. What do you like to eat? And so he bought me lunch. We sat and talked, and we just really shared about how interesting this was too. And this is kind of the point of the whole story. We both just really appreciated the synchronicity of it, that this was like the right laptop for me, and how, we both respected each other's trepidation or hesitation around, you know, what was going to make us both feel comfortable, and just sharing these little nuggets of of trust in finding that common ground. And I ended up having a delightful time. He had a really good time. He made me Colombian espresso after lunch, and we sat out on the veranda, a very, very upscale apartment, and just had a good time. And so, I'm collecting some really fond memories. And now, so I've got it set up here, and I knew that my MacBook Air always had a good camera, and this is so much better. I've got this little mini ring light right now. I've got another Logitech thing too. So, it's a big city, right? It's a foreign country, and I feel generally very, very safe here, as safe as I've felt anywhere in the world. Yeah, I've ventured way out all over the place. I haven't. But I have made some really neat connections with some really genuinely good human beings. And, you know, I think the point of this, or the lesson in today for me, is that, old me, pre intentional healing journey, so let's say pre summer winter solstice 2022, I was on a healing journey, but it was like, I don't, not right now. I was trying to get shit done. Um, Old me would have gone, oh, this feels kind of sketchy, and the part of me that's a risk taker would have gone, it'll be okay, right, and just woof, flow right in. That's generally worked out for me, but it certainly would have lacked a lot of the nuance and what made today really special. New me said, all right, listen, and this is really the point of this very long share. I feel like I'm holding court for an empty room, but I don't care. Um, I think the whole point of this is that I I didn't just blindly trust or not even consider whether I was trusting or not, right? I sat and I listened this morning. Last night was a little, but this morning when I woke up, I just sat really quiet, and I'm like, what do I know here? And I just said, this isn't like, well, it's a good enough laptop. It's not like I'll deal with the Spanish keyboard. I've got my little Logitech keys here. This is exactly what I'm wanting, with a little more, which is more is better. It's not like I'm paying for massive amounts of that I don't need, right? And I said, generally I feel safe here. And what are my where are my choice points, right? Where are the points where I can collect information and make a decision whether I'm going to move forward or not? And this is a new skill, you guys. And, it's what the gift of this is, just me really reaffirming what's been growing in me for a while now, probably since I sold my truck, which is that trust in something greater, right? Trust in the universe, but also trust in myself. And I think this too is a new experience, because before, I've done some wild stuff, and I've ventured in, and just because I think my safety valve was in the off position, just But what I see is that I went into this eyes open, and I trusted in the universe, but I also trusted in myself. And I'm like, I feel safe. I feel safe. And let's just be smart and venture in. And it ended up being an incredible experience. And, hey, I got a brand new MacBook Air 15-inch, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a terabyte of hard drive space. And I keep everything in the cloud. So I got lots of room. I'm super, super happy with this. So that's what I have. Anyway, have a good night, everybody. Much love to you all. And just please remember to follow the calling of your heart. All right.